Uh, Another great week for the ALN, and this is our second big event for the week. Hopefully people have had a chance to join our session on a national issues series on Tuesday to see Governor O'Malley, some representatives from Graham Thornton and ALN Senior Fellows and myself. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, I would really watch it. It's awesome, really good. Very interesting on equity and asset management. And today, we actually have Malak Bahrami, who has joined us on that topic previously. So perhaps we'll revisit that a little bit. But I have to say, I was especially pleased when I made connection with Malak because he works for Fairfax County, and I live in Fairfax County. And I have, at a couple times in the past, tried to figure out who is doing asset management for the county I live in. And it's a big county and one of the wealthiest counties in the country, and we should be doing asset management. And it turns out we are. So welcome, Malak. It's great to have you join ALN Thursday at 4 today.
Thank you, Jim. It's great to be here. Yes, I do work for Fairfax County Park Authority, and I am their asset manager. It is always a pleasure to be here with you guys, and there's always good discussion and good conversation. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, we've become, Malak and I have occasional chats that we get into some really interesting stuff.
Yes, indeed, we do.
Indeed. So we start with an origin story. So how'd you get into asset management? And how'd that lead you here today?
So actually, I went to school to become a civil engineer. So my training is a civil engineer with focus in structures, foundations, and construction. And when I came out of school, I was designing residential subdivisions and commercial developments. And over the years, I ended up working in every different part of the asset life cycle, from design to construction, to managing construction, to construction closeout, commissioning and turning over to operation folks or owner operator. And did work with the different departments of transportation, doing bridge inspection for a number of years. Did that, which is the condition assessment part of the asset management, and also ancillary highway structures. And finally, after a while, I decided to join Fairfax County, and then I was the owner's representative, part of the asset life cycle. After which I was working for Public Works, and now I was basically the operation part of the asset life cycle. And we had assets that builders would build and turn over to us, and it was storm conveyance systems, and my branch was responsible for condition assessment, monitoring, and CCTVing, and all of that. And eventually my journey landed me at the Park Authority, where they were looking for an asset manager to oversee the asset management program with a total cost of ownership perspective in mind. So you could say I've done up until about a few years ago, I was focusing on different pieces at a time, and it all fell together to look at the holistic point of view of, okay, not just construction, not just design, not just operation, but let's zoom out and kind of look at the big picture.
Yeah, I have a favorite old teaching story that I think of often is. A short version of it is someone that just through their life experience, in ancient times, it was said in, that picked up all these individual skills just, through the randomness of life. And in the end, it turned out that they took all their individual skills and figured out how to make portable tents big enough for an army,
Wow.
and became a favorite of the emperor or whatever. But just an example of, you never know where it's going to go, or at least I never knew where it was going to go. But,
No, there are times that you're crawling through a 300 linear foot of culvert that's half sedimented, wondering your life choices, you know. But it's nice that like you said, after time passes by and you kind of step back and you look at how all these different puzzle pieces fit together. And what I really enjoy about asset management is you have the ability to focus on different the diversity of the portfolio that I'm dealing with right now. One day I could be working with folks who are focusing on historic buildings, and what does that mean? What does that to asset management? From an asset management point of view, there's no life expectancy for a historic building; it's infinity.
yeah,
So, we're supposed to maintain it into perpetuity. Or you could have a conversation with someone who is maintaining equipment and how do we do condition assessment on movable assets and equipment. So it's always interesting. It's always dynamic, and it kind of allows you to be challenged and flex those parts of your and background, which are technical, but at the same time, figure out how to work with the different moving parts and learn from people and teach people. So that's another enjoyable part of the asset management life that I like.
yeah. Well, that's a big part of what the ALN is about. Is just it's great just to have people from different backgrounds and sectors and environments. Diversity to the nth degree uh, is really awesome because it really informs and brings so much to the equation. But so tell us a little bit about Fairfax County parks. I mean, it's like, what do you have, two parks and three cars or something, or like?
Yeah, just about that. So Fairfax County Park Authority is the largest landowner in Fairfax County.
Yeah.
We have about over 23,000 acres of land, parkland, and our portfolio of assets includes everything from golf courses to driving ranges to rec centers. We have, as I mentioned, historic houses. We have the natural nature preserves that we have visitor centers that people go visit for bird watching, for enjoying nature. For example, Huntley Meadows Park is a boardwalk on top of a wetland, which is beautiful. Um, we have lots of movable equipment and that we manage. Anything from gators to mowers to backhoes or dump trucks, and also a large number of horizontal and linear assets. So horizontal assets like hundreds of athletic fields, baseball diamonds, synthetic turf fields, playgrounds for different ages. Um, the it's a fairly um, long list of things that we manage and run.
Wow.
We have
So,
over 400 parks.
wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I live near Meadowlark Gardens, which is a botanical garden that's maintained by the county and by citizens volunteering time to do work there. Uh, and that's an amazing place. Yeah, really,
Yeah,
really
yeah.
nice. So what are some challenges being in that position and with that diverse set of assets?
Um, I think that the biggest challenge is always change. Is um, anytime you're introducing change into a system, there are going to be a group of people who are ready for it and embrace it, and there's going to be a group of people that um, have gotten efficient doing things the way they were doing, and they don't want to disrupt that. And also balancing that with the direction of the agency. So the Park Authority has a strategic plan, 5-year strategic plan, which we align our programs with that. Asset management program is no exception. And we have items on the strategic plan, and trying to align the asset management program to achieve the goals set out in the strategic plan, while at the same time making sure that the operations folks have what they need to continue operating, and at the same time modernizing and revamping the program, and ultimately the tools that are used to um, basically capture the work that people do. And, asset management, uh, my title is an asset manager, but the real asset managers are people who are operating the equipment, and they're maintaining it, and they're doing condition assessment, and it's capturing that work, and making sure that we can leverage that data to make data-driven business decisions as to how to move forward. Should we repair it another time, or should we replace it, or do we even want to continue owning this type of assets? Maybe we want to rent it from now on because we don't have a lot of usage. Balancing the usage across the organization, and there's always going to be a perception at times where change makes some people feel like they're no longer in control of their own destiny, when in actuality what we're trying to work through is encourage and create a environment to foster collaboration. So each part of the asset life cycle is kind of handled by a different group of people, whether it's finance or purchasing or planning or construction, to the operational folks to really keep our assets up and going. And big thank you to them. To when the time comes to retire the asset. So it's really getting all of these different players to have a forum to capture all of this data so that we can make better decisions, better and more informed decisions based on more data.
That's an awesome description of what an asset management system should do. So I got several questions on that, but first let me ask you, we're always wondering, in discussing how to get counties and states and municipalities and other organizations to consider asset management. Did they have an asset management program before you arrived, and how did they go from not having one at some point to having one?
So they did. The Park Authority has had an asset management program and a CMMS for a long while. We were using a software system that had kind of we'd reached a point of either upgrading that software and or kind of stepping back, saying, okay, do we want to continue on this path? And it was back in 2018 timeframe. Park Authority dedicated more resources and personnel, and created a branch to oversee the asset management program. Yeah. So yeah, it's been, I would say that the agency has been incredibly supportive of the program, and they had the foresight to kind of step back and say, okay, the old way of the old technology that we were using obviously was no longer serving our needs, and what is available now in the market with advancements of technology will enable us to leverage that more as we conduct business.
So technology was a big driver of the changes.
That was a big part of it, yes.
Yeah. So as you were talking before, a few minutes ago, I was like ticking off in my head the ISO 55000 fundamentals and the requirements, and it seems like you were really checking all the boxes. Are those documents part of your approach, or have you reached those approaches independent of that?
So not in a formal fashion. It's not we're not following the ISO 55000 guidelines, but what we are doing is trying to align ourselves with industry best practices and align ourselves with ASTM. ASTM has a lot of practices, standard practices for asset management.
Mhm.
And a lot of those documents kind of carry the same banner when it comes to stakeholder involvement and having a formalized approach to your um, portfolio's life
Mhm.
cycle. And so
Mhm.
I think it just we happen to be doing the right thing.
Seems like you've done a really good job of
Thank
it.
you.
So how about the larger county? Does Fairfax County have asset management and other
Um,
functions, or are
I,
they
I
not there yet?
So I do. The county has different portion. There are different divisions within the county that I would say my counterparts, for example, in the school system, but they're really more focused to in the operations part of it. So
Mhm.
the schools get built, and then they are turned over to the operations folks when they go in and tag and identify the assets and create the assets in the inventory so that they can cut work orders against it and observe it and condition and plan maintenance. Um, the within the county there are different as I said, like for example, public works has maintenance and stormwater management division, which I used to work at, and they handle more the stormwater and the transportation, so roads and sidewalks and bridges and trails that the county handles. So they kind of manage that part of the portfolio
Mhm.
within the greater county. And I'm not an expert on all the divisions yet. Every
Sure.
day I learn more. Yes, it's a huge organization,
Yeah.
but there's a capital facilities development division, which really kind of they do a great job at the beginning part of the asset, where they asset life cycle, or what I call the birth of the asset, where they do the planning, the um, acquisition, the construction, the change of title, however we want to describe that. They handle that, and then they again turn it over to operations. And for the buildings within the county, there's another division that they're responsible for the maintenance of the facilities, mainly vertical assets. So there's different pieces.
Yeah. It's interesting. The early adopters of ISO 55000 have largely been organizations that some refer to as asset intensive organizations, which I think is really a misnomer. Because to me, a restaurant is an asset intensive organization. If they don't have assets, there's no restaurant. Uh, but I think what it is are asset centric organizations. So, the DC Metro, you know, everybody knows it's all about the trains. And if it's about anything else, it's about the buses, you know. Uh, but a more diverse organization, such as yours, with, the incredible array of assets, uh, I think it's a little harder to make the sale, to make the decision to see the value, because you have to bring these, everybody's not focused on one thing. It's like, well, this, and the other thing. Do you think there would be value in Fairfax County taking, I mean, just as an example, do you see potential value in counties or municipalities having a, more joined up version of asset management?
Um, Possibly. I mean, it certainly. I can't think of how it would hurt to
Yeah.
have that. But I would say, it really comes down to the decision of what is the intent of the program. If you're, for example, for us, the intent of the program is capturing the total cost of ownership. And for that to happen, we needed to have a program that encompassed the entire asset life cycle, the birth, the use, and disposal, or the acquisition, use, disposition. So in our case, it made a great sense to, okay, let's have a program that is coordinating with all the different pieces, and we're all marching to the same tune, with the end goal being capturing the cost. I think that in our case, it has definitely highlighted some areas that we can take advantage of and do things even more efficiently than we're doing it right now.
Yeah. Is, a big topic, and, as we're starting to work on the revision to ISO 55,000 documents. And that brings us back to a discussion of value and how to, realize value. My own personal view is a little different than others I've heard. Is I think value is only, you can develop value potential as an organization, but the value is realized by stakeholders. And I think the county is a great example. It's great to have a park, but until somebody walks into the park, what is the value of the park? If it's not used. And there could be, negative versions too. If you're next to the landfill might have negative value to you. Is that kind of stakeholder outcome? Is that part of your system, or is that something you have metrics for or try to build in?
So the Park Authority, we have a planning and development division, and within that, our planning group, they do a great job every so many years. They do a needs assessment, which really gauges what does the county need in terms of parks and recreation, and what direction should we head, and where are the opportunities and that we can leverage. So I think in the next few years, probably that's going to be something that we'll revisit. And again, like I said, it's a cyclical process, and we're coming up to the next round of that cycle where we get input on, we need more parks, or we need more soccer play fields, or we need more baseball diamonds, or whatever the need is, or we want to have more trail system. I mean, our trail system, we get a lot of positive feedback from the county residents about the value it adds to their lives. But like something that you said about being adjacent to a facility, sometimes some of these facilities, you don't have to be an active participant to reap the benefits. For example, having green space, you can be a passive participant by just living nearby, but you're still reaping the benefits of the open space and forested area.
Yeah. So actually was had a little involvement in a Fairfax County park issue. I think a few years ago where I live, I'm surrounded by an organic vegetable farm, Potomac vegetable farm. My neighbor is the farm. And one of the people another young farmer that was working with her, there was some land donated to the county, and there was a debate on what they were going to do with the land. And one of the options was to turn it into an urban farm, or at least part of it.
Right.
And another option was to build a soccer field. Which is like, how do you compare that? But it takes me to, it maybe brings in what we were discussing about equity on Tuesday with Governor O'Malley is, how do you weigh that? One issue might have very large, constituency behind it, or a very powerful constituency, or a very influential constituency, or might use social media, as Governor O'Malley pointed out, might use social media very effectively. And another constituency that really should be considered might not be, have the advantage on any of those. And that so how that decision gets made is a really interesting and to a large extent, asset management decision.
Yeah. So what we do is we have notices and public hearings for any kind of major projects, and we capture the residents' input on what is the direction that should be taken, or what are the reasons for and what are the reasons against. So there is a public process part of this that for each one of the projects that gets executed. We're also, the Fairfax County also has a equity program, and the equity office produces some metrics that are based on what is called the vulnerability index. And the vulnerability index takes into account different data points, diversity, socioeconomic data points. And what we try to do is leverage these existing data points in our processes, in the public process, and in terms of, for example, we're working on incorporating that into the our asset criticality, which informs asset maintenance. So, if a particular asset is in a highly vulnerable area, it would have a higher vulnerability score, amongst many others. It's not the only data point, but that's one of the data points that we are working on incorporating.
And then the TCO is figured into that as well.
So the TCO, we are working towards creating that framework and the technology to capture it. We have great estimates as to how much different types of facilities cost us. And our hope is to leverage the program and the technology to really talk about the particulars, not just the types, and kind of have the ability to report at a, maybe at a park level, what is the total cost for this park. And that would be basically boiling up in the family of assets that creates that park, all the different costs associated with the different family members into that group or that park.
A family of assets. I'm going to use that. That's good. Did you just make that up, or do you use it?
No, I use that all the time. It's because we got our classification, and then we got our hierarchy, and the hierarchy is going to be a family of asset that serves that park.
Nice. Well, awesome. You make me proud to live
in it. Been a really good discussion, and there's a couple questions that maybe you can get to in overtime.
Sure.
What asset management successes have you had? What have you implemented in your time there, and what do you consider your success? But before we get to those, I'd like to announce that in our overtime section, for the people who can stick around, we are welcoming Chris Silkey. Chris Silkey is the Parks and Recreation Asset Manager for Portland, Oregon, and he is active in the ALN Advancing Equity with Asset Leadership. So before we go into time, I want to let people be able to leave if they have to. And I did not show the slides earlier, so here are the slides. Thank you to our organizational members, especially this month. Uberlytics and Mentor APM, the sister companies, which if you didn't see last week's Thursday at 4, we had a lot of fun, and that's a good one. And next week's is also guaranteed to be a good one. Gary Merrow is the Vice President of Facilities for the Atlanta Airline Terminal Company, and they have had some of their critical facility assets certified to ISO 55000 once, and then in the recertification, they have expanded that. So while I let Chris in, could you address what you have done? What do you consider, your achievements, and what's your biggest success?
So I would say that I'm answering that question with my particular position. I would say that we were successful in a very short period of time. Right when COVID hit, our work order management system needed to be replaced, and we were successful in while staying remote, interview our different parts of our organization and create the business flow maps and the all the different documentation that we needed to configure an entirely new system. And we tackled it in 3 phases. And within a very short time frame of, I think we set out in March to implement an entire new work order management system. And our go live was for the first phase was, I believe, July 1st. So in that time frame, we were successful in collaborating with our IT folks, with all the operational folks, with everybody in the park authority to kind of make this a priority, with the understanding that the system would enable us to leverage it for communication. So in terms of a particular work order, when it was created, the system is now being utilized and provides transparency to the end user who filed the ticket as to the progress, who's the owner of the ticket, has it been closed, is it open, what's the status, and so on. So I think that's something that I'm proud of, to say that we were able to accomplish, especially with COVID. Last year was incredibly challenging, as I'm sure everybody knows.
Yeah, awesome.
Well, that's great. Thank you. I'd like to, it's my pleasure actually to introduce Chris and Malak. And since you have similar, exact same jobs, Chris, did you learn anything?
Yeah, that was fascinating. And Malak, that's a tremendous accomplishment, switching over or implementing a new work order system and such a complex system that has vertical, horizontal, linear, natural built assets is phenomenal. And I know we're actually contemplating changing systems in the near future. And by in the near future, I mean probably a couple of years. And it's going to be a couple year effort to make that happen. So yeah, that's great. So one thing that's really interesting to me is I've actually been searching out other asset managers in the Parks and Rec industry, and they're actually, yeah, exactly. Maybe this is the two of us, right? There's not a lot, and it's interesting. There's no real standards for the industry in the US. So I've looked to Australian, New Zealand standards, and yeah, so I hope that it's a movement that just gains momentum within the Parks and Rec industry as a whole. So
I agree. I think that, and I have, and Jim can talk to this more than I can, but Australia is a great source of asset management guidelines and documentation. But I think one thing that really we're hoping to leverage is adopting a classification system, and we're adopting OmniClass. So I don't know if you guys have considered using it, but we've adopted OmniClass because of the flexibility it provides. So it's not just Uniformat or AIA, but it also gives you the flexibility to have, because being a park authority, it's almost like being a small state, because you have roads, you have open land, you have nature, you have natural resources, you have all these operational facilities that are going on. So it's very complex.
Right. And I was also excited to hear the use of the Fairfax County Vulnerability Index. We use something similar, and we include youth because it pertains directly to our mission. So as an additional indicator. And, you know, one time we actually did track it, that there was an issue, a safety issue with some types of playground equipment. And so we had to quickly close things and remove things and move through the system rather rapidly. So that meant people were without beloved playground equipment for a period of time.
Yeah.
And we tracked the phone calls and the emails that we got in response to that.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, as you can expect, the more connected, politically connected or wealthier neighborhoods actually did advocate for their system. And we used that indicator of vulnerability to prioritize the actual work. And what was interesting when we followed that indicator, went straight to that one, looked at the log, there were no calls. There wasn't a single call from that neighborhood. And I think it just kind of was like, wow, you know, people who need these assets need the infrastructure the most, and they're not advocating it. So that just kind of reinforced the point that you really have to be proactive and intentional with where the investments are made, and not just, you know, follow the advocacy. You're
exactly correct. Yeah. And the advocacy is important. You know, we have a lot of friends of the park where we are, which they contribute just an immense amount to the park system. We have a park foundation that contributes to the park system an immense amount as well, and our volunteers are just fantastic. Thank you to all of them. But there is I don't think that we could exist without the advocacy, but I do agree with you that it is important to consider those factors that define criticality. So in your scenario, in your particular case that you described, you know, criticality of that asset was defined by how many phone calls or emails you got about it. So, you know, that's a really good way of measuring it, a metric of getting the kind of the feel for what's out there, what's the need.
Well, we have a question.
Well, and just let me make a clarification quickly that we didn't follow the phone calls.
Oh, okay.
We followed the vulnerability metric.
Okay, gotcha.
And it was interesting that when we followed that, we looked, had there been any phone calls from that neighborhood, and there were not.
Oh,
so
wow.
It reinforced the need to actually use some proactive approach. So I'm sorry, there was a question, Mike.
No, thank you for making that clarification.
Thank you.
Chris.
Yeah.
Really
I misunderstood.
Important.
Thank you.
No, that's all right.
Yes, Jennifer Zach from Uberlytics and Mentor APM has a question for Malak about the what system did you implement? But she also makes a comment that, well, she really likes the discussion, but Canada has resources for public asset management also. And so that for both of you, what are some of the unique challenges of addressing management of natural assets? But first, if you can talk about the software program.
Yeah, so we are actually implemented an occurrence of an existing system that we had, which is it's a solar winds product, but we configured it to manage our work order system and track the different work orders that we have. Mainly focus was demand work, not as much planned work, but we have slowly incorporated planned work as well, and we're tagging it to our existing asset inventory. Of course, we're gonna the plan is to refine the asset inventory and make it more accurate as time goes on. I hope that answers the question. And we're not done. This is for us an interim. We're still looking to identify a more capable technical solution.
And the question about natural assets. What's the challenges of managing natural assets?
Chris, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a great question because it was one of the more unique challenges when I started here with Parks and Rec. I'll say trees and urban forestry is a relatively mature model. Just as an industry, it's pretty well understood. There's good data models, and actually most major cities have done street tree and other tree inventories, and it's down. Natural areas, wetlands, forests, those types of assets, there's not a lot of standards out there. And in fact, we've started essentially trying to figure this out. And there was some there's a few things out there, but just to try to get comparability. So if I have $1 and I want to invest for maximum value, do I invest in open space park, irrigation, trails, or in the natural area? And so to get that kind of consistency, we do not have a condition assessment model or a function assessment model for that yet. So I'll leave it at that and just add that a lot of the value for a lot of these places is the access itself, but often that's built infrastructure. It's trails, it's trailheads, it's restrooms and things. So we do have models for that. It's the actual natural asset itself that lacks a model.
And I know Chris has a hard stop in just a minute. So Chris, if you have to go, that's great. We'll take Malak's answer. And thank you for popping in. This really
Nice
makes
to meet you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Yeah, let's touch base sometime, Malak. All right.
Absolutely.
I'll send an email to the both of you. Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for connecting us. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, so I would say that for natural resources, I agree with what a lot of what Chris said. I think what the focus needs to be is creating that framework. So when we are discussing, let's say we're talking about reinvestment based on condition, if our trails are measured in a condition rating that's got, let's say A through I don't know, A, B, C, D, let's say 4, and let's say our HVAC system's got 5 rating system, and our natural resources got a 3-point rating system. So I think creating a framework that everything is at least measured in a 5-category gauge system, and leveraging those like Chris said, there are a lot of documentation about, for example, for wetlands and streams and what defines the health of a wetland and stream. And we have a natural resources branch, which with folks that's their expertise. So we would work with them to create those categories and walk them back to the 5, let's say, and so the entire portfolio, you can see it in a 5 rating category. It doesn't matter if it's a golf course or a wetland or a trail.
Nice. All right, Mike, what do you think? We could go on forever.
Yeah, we really can. I see that we can have a park and recreations asset leadership board, and I know which two people could be co-chairs, but Jim, do you have a closing question? I'll let you end it.
Do I have a closing question? I don't think I do. I just want to say thank you, and makes me proud to live in Fairfax County, that you're taking all those things into consideration. You know, I've had
Thank you.
some interaction. I've lived here where I live for many years, but didn't really know much about, you know, their local government. And I think, you know, I've learned a lot about it, and I've learned a lot more about how it works today, and how decisions are made internally, just beyond the asset management question. So thanks for what you do, and thanks
Thank you.
for sharing with us today.
Of course, thank you. It's great to be part of a county and an organization that is very thoughtful and has great leadership.
Yeah, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is what we're trying to do. Great example. So look forward to your involvement on an ongoing basis, we hope.
Would be happy to. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks again to
Thank you.
our sponsors and to all the attendees who increased as the event went on. So that's good.
That's good.
It was great. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Thanks,
Bye,
man.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.